Hello, everyone. Welcome into the RotoViz Best Ball Show. My name is Colm Kelly. I am joined by the one, the only Zachary Krueger, and we are joined by the true one and only, the OG of RotoViz back in the day as well. Now with Sharp Football Analysis, we have Rich Hribar, who, of course, I'm sure everyone's already following over on Twitter at Lord Reeves, but we are really excited, Zach, to have Rich on today's show. We will be jumping in to a BBM3 draft over at Underdog Fantasy. In a couple of moments, we'll do some conversation, then we'll jump into that. But if you are playing over at Underdog Fantasy, you can use the code RotoViz to get yourself a 100% sign-up bonus up to $100. But Zach, we have done these. We've teased possibly doing it on a weekly basis at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UK, Ireland time. We have now done, I think, 3 of the last 4 weeks. And we have Peter Overzet on deck for next week. So it feels like we may be getting ourselves into a weekly stream here.
Yeah, I think we're finally coming into form and having this this show come up on a regular basis. And Rich is just kind of along with us now to help usher in that consistent week to week show. So, Rich, thanks for joining us. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, listen, anytime I can come back and do stuff with the Roto crew, I always love to come back and chat with you guys. I still have my RotoViz subscription, and I'm on the site regularly. So when I get invited back, I always try to make that happen.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to it. As I mentioned, we will be jumping into the draft in a couple of moments. We will get some of Rich's thoughts before we do that. A lot of conversation, obviously, with the tournament style of drafting that is going on now. I was fortunate enough with Sean Siegel and Blair Andrews to come second in the FFPC tournament last year. Hopefully we go one better and win some of these tournaments this year. But last year there was conversations around stacking, but not to the same extent as we do have this year. Some of the fields have grown in size. That team that we came second with, there wasn't a lot of stacking in that. There was some stacking in week 17 off the final of the playoffs, but not really intentionally. But we are seeing a lot more of the DFS conversation come over into it now, and there's a lot more structural information, a lot more data from how teams did last year. What are some of your thoughts on the playoff portion of it, week 17, and then target and stacks throughout your drafts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack with this. Interesting enough, I don't play in a ton of puppies and BBMs. I like to just use disposable income, and I like to have fun with it, like the Millie Maker. But, the way that this offseason has gone, I feel like a lot of people are using a large portion of their bankroll in these tournaments. I would not advise for that. It is a minus EV tournament. I like to play a lot of the 6-man leagues personally, but a lot of 6-man, 12-man leagues, you can go in and cash out. Hopefully you want to win and build up your bankroll and then kind of have some fun money like you do in DFS. And because of DFS, that's kind of where I see how things have gone in terms of stacking discussion. So one of the most successful ways I've gone and played DFS the last couple of years, I play more smaller field. It doesn't apply to this, but I do more game onslaughts, which has come up to how the playoff building, right, is. This is, can we get right on this game? If we make it to week 17, if we have Colts-Giants stacks, is that going to be the game that pops? Broncos-Chiefs. That's kind of where people have gone, and they've started to build their teams. Week 17 has gotten the most play this offseason that it's ever gotten in the history of fantasy football already, and it's not even July yet. And that kind of just, like I said, goes hand in hand, though, because I believe that that's like a successful way to play DFS. You get in these smaller fields, and you just onslaught games. And if you're right on the game, you're going to smash, and you're going to smash really big. And that's the way I love to play, and kind of invoke some of that kind of methodology.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I do think it's interesting. I think there might be a little bit too much being put into the week 17 element. You have to get to week 15 to get into the playoffs before we get there. And I think the overall structure of your roster is more important. If you can do the structure and add in those supplementary pieces, I think that's ideal. I think, obviously targeting high scoring offenses and then building out from there is a good way to do it. But yeah, a lot of airtime being given to week 17, but we'll see as we go through the draft today who we can mix in. And you did mention, these tournaments are getting more popular than ever. There's more people playing best ball than ever before. I think we have been doing best ball content. Me and Zach started doing it together last year, but myself and Sean Siegel have been doing it for a number of years. RotoViz have been covering it for years. But it has exploded this year with Underdog, for example, with even the FFPC's never too early best ball tournaments. There's more and more. Like this time 3 years ago, there was no best ball competitions happening at this time of the year. 5 years ago, it was MFL 10s was the things we were all doing. It has really expanded. So the good point you made there. We play in a lot of these leagues. We advertise playing in them. But it is very important to manage your best, or your not just your best ball bankroll, but your bankroll for the whole season. It's the same if you're playing DFS. You hit week 1 and you think, yeah, I'm gonna put 25 teams into the Millie Maker this week, and then you get to week 4 and you're like, I have no money left. So you have to really balance that out throughout. So that's a good piece to touch on. We will be jumping into that draft in just a moment. For anyone watching in, make sure you hit that thumbs up button here on the RotoViz YouTube channel. But you did post up some information on Twitter over the last couple of days around running backs who could potentially be running back ones here. And myself and Zach really like the zero RB approach, but we will go with that modified or hero RB approach if we can get those running backs. And we have you on the show. The tweet did catch my attention. There's a couple of guys' names in there that I'm very tempted by this year. There's a couple of guys' names in there that I'm not tempted by. So I'm interested in your thoughts on some of those guys who could be, RB1s, so a top 12 running back. You did touch on as well. Could be the running back 1 overall. So what are some of your early running back thoughts for 2022?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of just top-down look on kind of the anatomy of players. I a couple weeks ago had a tweet that talked about how the importance of drafting wide receivers on good teams is, and the hit rates based on the arbitrary levels of how many team wins a team can have. Now we can use kind of the win totals and some of the books to kind of guide us into some guys that may be undervalued or overvalued. And just kind of the same thing with the running backs. I haven't posted any stuff with the team win stuff, but I'll probably tie it into an article eventually down the line here. And I've been pulling some ADP stuff, and I've just been seeing a lot of people. What really got me going on this was a lot of people have started this groundswell of Aaron Jones can be the RB1 overall. And I just don't see it, really. I don't really see a clear path to it. You needed A.J. Dillon injury, I guess, is the clearest path, I guess, to it. But, Aaron Jones, through this point of his career, has been a player that has thrived on how good he is at football, right? He's been a super efficient player because he's really good at football, and he scores a lot of touchdowns. But if you look at his touch totals compared to his peers, they've just never been there. I mean, he's basically been just right on the fringe of being an RB1 in terms of touches per game. And then last year, he's floating around 14.9 per game. And I was looking, I was like, well, how many times has the RB1 overall been and not really had a full workload? And I looked over the last 30 years because I have, my database only goes back to 1992 because when target data was still incorporated. The RB1 in overall PPR scoring has averaged fewer than 20 touches per game just twice. It was Alvin Kamara 2 years ago. Obviously, you get the 6 touchdown Christmas gift to everybody, and D'Angelo Williams in 2008. And both those players had 20 touchdowns. So I guess that's the one thing you can say about Aaron Jones is he's been a proven touchdown scorer to this point in his career. To say all right, well, he's the only player outside of Derrick Henry that's had double-digit touchdowns at the running back just in the past 3 years. But can he get to 20? That's what you're going to need, I think, because I don't think the touches are really going to be there for him. Even with the receiving influx, I think there's definitely a runway for him to increase his receptions, something he's done every year in his career. I don't think anyone's wrong like that, but I don't think he can really get to the Alvin Kamara level workload that he had even 2 years ago. And then we still have to kind of question, will he even get to have those money touches that he had in years past? Because we saw when he came back in week 12 last year, back from injury and was fully healthy, A.J. Dillon out-touched him 17-5 in the red zone and 9-3 inside the 10-yard line. So while the receptions are going to go up, and there's definitely a path to saying, there's some maybe he could be how DeAndre Swift was at the beginning of last year, and he's been so good split out wide. I just don't think he has in his range of outcomes to get to the level of necessary requisite touches to be the RB1 overall. Does that make him a bad pick where he's going, no, that's not at all what I'm saying. That just what the fulcrum point, what led me kind of to go back and look at some of this stuff was. And just 2 of those guys that we said of those 30 running backs, 30 years of data have averaged fewer than 20 touches, and no one has averaged fewer than 18 touches per game. Mark Aaron Jones has never hit in his career at this point.
I think, I'm a Packers fan, but I do agree with a lot of what you said there. The other part, DeAndre Swift is somebody we targeted last year quite a bit, and I think he is interesting this year again, but they were a team last year who we projected to be behind, and a lot of that kind of thesis of what he was going to do was in the fourth quarter. I would expect this Packers team to have a strong season again and to be heading towards those playoffs. And that's realistically not going to mean that he's going to get those garbage time dump offs to really inflate that overall score and total in PPR. So we'll see when we get through these opening kind of 4 or 5 rounds, we head on into these running backs and how things play out here. But
not to, I'm sure you probably dropped this, but how did you become to be a Packers fan where you are?
So this is, I have mentioned this a couple of times, but the Packers obviously wear green and gold. The local colors of the county where I'm based in is green and gold. And that was as basic as it got at the start. I'm also an Arsenal supporter. They are now not owned by the supporters anymore. They're owned by Stan Kroenke of the LA Rams. So that was a thing. They were a kind of a fan-owned club, and the team I supported were still relatively fan-owned at that point. But that is no longer the case as Stan Kroenke is there at the moment. But that's my story of how to become a Packers fan. When we're looking, Zach, I think we probably will get towards jumping in at the moment. We have people watching in. If you have any takes, any thoughts on any of the players we talk about or we discuss, let us know in the chat. And of course, we have a Scott Fishbowl entry to give away. The information for that is in the show notes of today's show. So make sure you get involved in that. We do have a comment that comes in from fellow Donegal, or not fellow Donegal, fellow Irishman. That is Conor O'Driscoll, who did win that FFPC tournament last year. He does say that Donegal is also known as the Forgotten County. So taking a swipe there. But we will get ready to jump in to the draft. Is there any spot in drafts? You mentioned you haven't done a huge amount of these, but is there any draft slots that you're preferring to get, Rich? If you're building your teams, do you want to be in the start, the middle, the end? Where are we looking here?
Well, I'm still drafting a lot of teams. I'm just not really, like I said, firing 50% plus of my bankroll into these tournaments, and that's why I just kind of I feel like that's where like the guidance is going right now and the content, and I just still want to caution people, like, these are very still minus EV tournaments. But I've been drafting all over. I feel like I've been in the back third a ton, so it'd be nice to finally like be up in the front, because being in the front kind of allows us, especially in these large field tournaments, to kind of maybe some potential to get a little more unique. I know, like Pete Overzet's you said he's going to be on the next one. His most successful team last year, they took Devontae Adams at 102, and it allowed to build a unique kind of start, because the initial rounds, the player symmetry is typically dictated by ADP, right? Like when you look at player correlations, like, how many teams last year had Christian McCaffrey plus Justin Jefferson, there were so many, and George Kittle, right? Like that was like the three-way start that was like so popular. It's like, how am I going to lose with this? And it's like, because 700 people also have the same team, like the same start. So being in the front does allow us to get a little more unique. Like say if we like wanted to eat weird and say, well, let's take Dalvin Cook 102, right? Like it could give us a unique kind of like build that way as a start, because just initial ADP carries so much of the weight the first few rounds.
No, I would agree with that, and it's going to be interesting to see where we have we been allocated a slot here, Zach, or are we still waiting on a couple of people?
Yeah, you should be able to see it. We're at the 104.
Okay, so I was going to say we've been fortunate, Zach. We've got some early slots. So 104, Rich, you're the guest. Where would you like to lean here? At the 104 as Cooper Kupp goes 101.
We'll see what comes. I mean, it figures we do a RotoViz show and a wide receiver goes first overall. I don't think that's two receivers, so it figures. So, I mean, we just sit pat here, and I think we just take one of Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey. It's, super chalky, but, the room is not letting us be fun because it's a RotoViz draft.
Yeah, we could jump. We could jump and get Jamar Chase here, but I do think I haven't got McCaffrey much because, like I've said there, a lot of the time we've been at the 4 slot. We've gone with somebody like Chase or with Jefferson, for example. So again, I'd like to differentiate some of the players we're getting. So I'm happy to go with McCaffrey there. Are you happy with that, Zach?
Yeah, I think McCaffrey is fine here. I went ahead and just let the clock run out with him in the queue, so we should have him here in just a second. Luckily, that all worked according to plan, so we do have him now. I'll go ahead and pull up the draft board here, and we're officially underway.
When we do have Rich on and we're talking about some of these running backs who could be running back one, we have seen in the past, obviously, what Christian McCaffrey can do, but a majority of the last 2 seasons he has missed through injury, and we're obviously like, he is, for me, the consensus 102 at running back this year. What's your thoughts there? Should we be a little bit more hesitant to him doing what he did maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
I think there has to be at least some thought about just one, we don't see a lot of players just basically ghost us for 2 years and just come back and be incredible. And then 2, like when does the Carolina Panthers start taking stock in some of this stuff, right? Like when do the Panthers brass start to say, well, we have 2 good players, one in Christian McCaffrey, one in DJ Moore, and we can't keep one of our assets on the field. We look at his size. Christian McCaffrey is one of these guys that is one of those tweener backs. He said he plays at 210. He's had a workload that's been kind of enormous. And when do they just kind of like say like, well, maybe we shouldn't give him this many touches? Could that happen? Now, this is a situation where Matt Rule has to win some damn football games, though. So like, I would say that like this year, like they still have to rely on Christian McCaffrey to kind of carry this offense. So I'm not as hesitant on that, but those would be like kind of the things that you kind of would poke holes into and saying like, well, could this thing kind of come off the rails while still being healthy?
Yeah, he feels to me like a player where if it comes off the rails, I'm going to be okay. I took Christian McCaffrey. I'm not really going to regret that pick at the end of the season. Like it's a pick that you do based on what your expectations are, what's going to happen. Every player has that injury risk, but he has had maybe the rest over the last couple of years will do him good when we get to this season. We will be picking in about 7 picks time. I'm hoping that we see some nice wide receiver options land back to us. Somebody I've been drafting a lot is AJ Brown. I'd be interested in your thoughts on him. But other players that tend to get back here sometimes is the likes of Deebo Samuel or maybe even a T. Higgins if we're taking a little bit of an early step at him. But you did mention Deebo goes in that next pick. But you did mention some of the running backs we touched on earlier. Any of those guys intriguing when we get to maybe the third pick or the second pick here for us?
Yeah, I mean, the room is caught on now. He's kind of nudged his way up to the 2-3 turn, but like I was just auto picking Saquon in the 3rd round. I still think he's fine at the 2-3 turn too, especially because if you start with like an elite running back, right? And I know like Sean is probably like, no, we're not doing this. But like, imagine being able to get like telling someone in fantasy football, like even 2 years ago, like, hey, next, in like there'll be a 2-year span here. You'll be able to get on a team Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Alvin Kamara all on the same team. Like, imagine being able to tell someone that. Like, because even Sean will defend. Like, there's an archetype of running back you still want, and all 3 of those guys check the box, and it's not you still able to get like one of those guys, and because that gives you so many more outs. If 2 of the 3 guys hit, like you're smashing.
Let me interrupt real quick. Sorry, we have 17 seconds to make a pick. I have Aaron Jones queued up, but the other wide receiver would probably be AJ Brown or someone of that nature.
I would go AJ Brown or Saquon Barkley here. You can have the final say, Rich.
I mean, do we have any shot that we believe Saquon makes it around? And this probably not.
Hold on. I just took AJ Brown because I had Aaron Jones at the top of the queue.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't have time to maneuver everything.
I'm also one of the worst guests for live drafting stuff because I tend to talk through all the picks, and someone's like, "Hey, we're on the clock."
It's okay. That's all right. No one seemed to want Aaron Jones, and so I went ahead and just grabbed AJ Brown real quick.
That's okay. I'm happy to take AJ Brown. You were right. Saquon went on the next pick, so I do think it was a case there. Whichever we took wasn't going to get back to us. So we have 1 pick to go here. Kyle Pitts is in the queue with the likes of Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams. Mike Williams would probably be my pick here, but any other suggestions that you want to slot in for either of you guys?
I'm kind of good with whatever we want here. I think that Javonte Williams is someone who obviously RotoViz loves, but you got to be a little bit concerned about what he's going to do with Melvin Gordon still in the fold. Nick Chubb, not really renowned pass catcher, but probably decent value here. And any particular lean for you, Rich? Now that we're on the clock, we got 20-ish seconds.
Is Michael Pittman gone?
He just went before us.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's the guy I like to look to in this spot, especially when I start with a good running back and you have a good receiver. What do we got? I'm looking at your screen right here.
We got Pitts at the top. I could even do like Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, I mean,
Pitts. How
about let's do Hollywood Brown.
We actually we timed out on Pitts.
Oh,
we're going to have some fun on this draft. We're going to keep timing out. But I think, look, I'm a big fan of Pitts. The problem I think is going to be, like, I want to get a tight end in those first 5 rounds. We did have a draft last week with Josh Larkey, and then when we got to later in the draft, I was kind of like, I wish I had taken TJ Hawkinson earlier in the draft to set up our build. So the player that I'm interested in your thoughts there that you mentioned is Michael Pittman. I've heard Matt Harmon talking about him over the last couple of weeks as well. Somebody he likes. Me and Zach actually did a show probably about 3 weeks or a month ago, Zach, where we said that he was somebody we shouldn't be drafting at his current ADP. His ADP has actually increased since that point. So I'm interested in your thoughts on Pittman for 2022. I think he finished wide receiver 14 last year. Do we see him making that leap into, the wide receiver 1 category?
I think he just checks a number of objective boxes we look for. We know the inherent volume is there. We know we want players that play for winning teams. I mean, this is a team that's got a 10-win total. They play in one of the worst divisions in the NFL. He's gonna have a great schedule lined up. He's got that big physical, like kind of archetype we look for, the old RotoViz days, if you guys remember when he used to be chubby chasers, but he's got that double-digit touchdown upside. He's also getting a massive quarterback upgrade. If you look at Matt Ryan last year, I know people are like, Matt Ryan. Look at Matt Ryan from a clean pocket last year, his on-target rate in clean pocket rate compared to like Carson Wentz and where he was. It's a massive upgrade in terms of what he's going to see in terms of catchable targets, and we know the volume is going to be there. The next two targets that the Colts had in terms of wide receivers that were with him last year were Zach Pascal and T.Y. Hilton. Both those guys are gone. Just Alec Pierce is there this year. So, I mean, he just checks so many objective boxes that I just was trying to grab him. And he's great for those Saquon teams, right? Especially if you could, when we could open with Jonathan Taylor. I know we're getting to week 17 bullshit here, but when you open Jonathan Taylor, Saquon, Michael Pittman, I mean, you're off and running already, man.
Yeah, I think that's a range there where I think the wide receiver does get quite flat, but he is somebody who's, I like him as a player. I don't know if I like him as a draft pick at that point of drafts, but Zach's going to be, we got a comment here that Rich's internal clock he doesn't seem to have it for 30-second picks. We're in that for the rest of the draft. Our internal clock is going to be called Zach Krueger. I think that's what Zach was trying to do this there. But
we're about to be on the clock. We are right now. I have Allen Robinson, Gabe Davis, and Terry McLaurin as wide receivers in the queue. I have Breece Hall at running back. Also, Zeke has fallen a little bit, along with Cam Akers. Where are we leaning right here, would we say?
I would lean towards Lamar Jackson or Rashad Bateman or Breece Hall. They'd be my three selections, but Rich in his internal clock has 10 seconds to
yeah, go ahead, Rich. Who you got?
I would say Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson? I think I'm
okay, we'll let him have it.
Yeah.
He was the other wide receiver that was on that show that we said don't draft at his current ADP.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fine because we at this point in time, the wide receiver room has actually been really kind of rather heavy early on. We've got a lot of guys flying off the board already. And then on top of that, I like the Jackson and Bateman pick, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe one of them slips back to us, especially given that guys like Zeke and Akers and McLaurin have essentially fallen past their ADPs. Maybe we get one of these guys back. Well, we didn't. That's actually great. We didn't. So that's good. They're both gone. So, I mean, man, Ezekiel Elliott here would almost be kind of interesting and also gross given just his slide. But is there anyone else we could take that would
somebody Reeds did talk about? So, what's your thoughts on him? He's not somebody that I'm trying to draft, but at this point, he's slipped quite a bit when we're talking about uniqueness.
Who's this?
Elliott.
I mean, really, the only thing you can say about Ezekiel Elliott is if they didn't pull him off the damn field when he was playing hurt, only Najee Harris played more snaps than him last year. If they didn't pull him off the damn field when he was openly talking about being hurt and that he was ineffective, I mean, how are we expect him to reduce his touches again this year? Like but I mean, yeah, I mean, he's approaching that age apex. He's been in kind of a declining player in efficiency. Really, kind of the best thing you have kind of in your favor with Ezekiel Elliott is that like he gets all those money touches, right? Like he gets all that use inside the 10-yard line. That's kind of like the feather in his cap right now, is that if the Cowboys are going to be good, he's going to score a good portion of the touchdowns.
So are we fine with taking him 13 picks past ADP here? Do we like that?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
I'm letting Rich drive this show today.
Yeah, McLaurin.
Well, I didn't make any picks in the second or third round.
No, I think we should go with Zeke here. He did slide. McLaurin, I'd heard you ask about him, Rich. He went just a couple picks before us.
And this is cool. This is probably totally against half of the teams you guys draft because all these guys are over 25.
Yeah, we've also never had a running back.
They're my first times picking them this year, so I'm getting that variant and exposure. So, but no, we'll see how it plays out. I think this is an interesting range when we get into this point. I mentioned Lamar Jackson. Depending on where he goes, third quarterback is where I expect him to go. I would rather him not be going in the fourth round, but that is where he tends to go. I think if any of the likes of Jalen Hurts or Kyler Murray manage to get back to us here in the sixth, I think they would be very interesting players to get that quarterback there. How do you feel about this range, though? Obviously, you did take the Allen Robinson selection, and obviously he hasn't been in an offense as good as the Rams really in his career. Really checked out last season with Chicago. They treated him badly. He decided he wasn't really going to play for them. But obviously he's been with the Jaguars, and he hasn't really had a full, I guess, efficient offense to play in. But we see this range where it is Robinson, Davis, Metcalf. Now we get into Bateman, who I really do like heading into this second season now with Moore no longer there. But we have Terry McLaurin, who is obviously the quarterback and contract issues. We have Brandon Cooks, who is probably offense issues, but I think he is still in a pretty good spot. Not in on Cooper, not in on Mooney all that much. Juju could hit with the Chiefs. There's a lot of question marks in this range. How do you feel when we get into that spot? Like, I'm not looking to draft Ezekiel Elliott, but at that point, I was tempted to go with Dobbins or Hall would have been the other options that I would have given you. I'm not really, outside of Bateman in that range, I'm not really diving into any of those wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, again, we want to target players that play in good teams. I hate to distill it so simply, but look at the history of guys that perform well in fantasy football. The teams that score more touchdowns win games, and they lead more fantasy points. So some of these guys get really kind of dicey in that area, especially when you're trying to elevate guys. Allen Robinson particularly, I think, is more interesting because of the way he was utilized last year. He's going to be playing in a different system. So look at this last year. 40% of his routes were strictly slants and curls last year. 40%. Think of how ludicrous that is. On those targets, 5.9 yard average depth of target on those. In the Sean McVay offense, he'll be playing purely outside because, they have a pretty good interior wide receiver there that isn't going anywhere. So the route diversity is going to jump. Even in the Rams offense in totality, just 20% of the routes run by all the Rams pass catchers were just slants and curls. That doesn't exist in this offense. No team had more air yards on digs, post, go, and crossing routes, the most fantasy-friendly routes in the Rams. Well, guess who was last in the NFL on terms of air yards in those routes? Bet you can guess, it was the Bears. So he's going from the team that was first, from the team that he's bottom. So he's going to get a lot more terms of fantasy-friendly routes. He's probably never going to push 150 targets again. But in these best ball leagues, that's where you want to target. We want that upside. We want those upside targets. I mean, that's the thing with you talked about the quarterbacks. That's why I love getting Marquise Brown where we were, is because those Cardinal stacks are so naturally easy to build.
I love Zach trying to nip in.
I'm trying to tell you guys what
I don't mind if you don't get to nip in because I wanted a Jalen Hurts here, so I don't mind if you don't get to.
Okay. Let's take Jalen Hurts here. I'm trying to politely interrupt Rich while also trying to get the pick in. So let's go Jalen Hurts here. We're gonna run it back here in just a couple of picks. So we got Hurts, we got a stack with him and AJ Brown. I actually rather like that. We lost Kyler Murray a couple picks before, which is fine, and we don't currently have a Cardinal on roster.
Having two wide receivers at this point is pretty sketchy.
Yeah, especially with how heavy it is. Yeah, we're all going to be panicking in a little bit. But I went ahead and queued up several wide receivers. There's a couple guys who I didn't queue up, like Michael Thomas and DeAndre Hopkins. I think for obvious reasons, I'm not really sure that either of them fit our build, given how light we are at the position. But I am intrigued by any of the guys of Ayuk, Hunter Renfrow, Russell Gage. I can scroll down further, but we're getting into Christian Kirk, Sky Moore territory here, which would be a little bit dicey. If any of these guys in the queue make it back to us, would we take one of them over some of the other guys we have remaining? They're not even going to make it back. I can just see it now.
I know that you skipped over them, but both Hopkins and Michael Thomas give us Week 17 correlation.
That's what we know. That's what we need.
In different ways. You have Hopkins with Pitts. The one different thing I will say about Hopkins is I think he's great for these best ball formats because he's not a player. He's not hurt. There's no debate how healthy will DeAndre Hopkins be when he comes back and plays. He's going to just be back and healthy. Whereas we still have to kind of get this runway. The one thing I will say about Michael Thomas though is I feel like this is the period to draft him. Because if he does show up to training camp in any capacity, there's no way he hangs around wide receiver 36. There's just no way.
Do we want him here then over?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is this team for me is off the rails enough at this point that, I'm willing to let Rich go with Michael Thomas.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do Michael Thomas here. At this point,
let's have some fun.
Did someone take Hopkins?
Yeah, someone took Hopkins at 73, so we just missed him. At this point in time, we're kind of between either one of these running backs, or which we don't really need, or Russell Gage or Michael Thomas. I think logically, just playing this out, if we assume that both of these guys hit to their capacity, which one's going to actually hit way better? It's going to be Michael Thomas. So given that
I'm going to beat this drum again, Zach, as well. If we hadn't have taken Kyle Pitts, we could have drafted TJ Hawkinson here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Why did you take Kyle Pitts?
The clock ran out.
It was my fault. I was talking through the pick probably, but yeah, we definitely should have went wide receiver.
Yeah, we'll be fine though. We can always correlate Kyle Pitts with one of his quarterback teammates who largely go undrafted the final round. So we can sneak that one in if we really want to.
We get Mariota in there towards the end. So at the moment we are. I think we have one tight end, 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and 1 quarterback. Where are we thinking that we need to go here, Zach, over the next couple of rounds? The problem you see, and this is obviously, we said like why we're thin at wide receiver, and I think Zach was the one that said we're going to start to panic in a moment. I feel like this is how people who draft running backs early feel when they don't have enough running backs at this point. We're the opposite. We're like, we don't have enough wide receivers here at this point. And I feel like a lot of the time when we do these builds, a lot of the favorite guys that I'm looking to try and draft then will be going in this round, like, Devin Singletary, for example. There's a lot of running backs that'll go in the next 3 rounds where we're going to have to kind of try and think about the wide receiver position. And I think that the wide receiver position is going to be pretty flat here. So I'm really interested to see how it plays out. The other thing I think we can do is look to get that second quarterback here in the quarterback window and see how things play out. But you're in the queue, Zach. You're managing that. Who are our options here as we're 5 picks away?
So I have a ton of wide receivers in here. I'll just go ahead and rattle them off real quick. I'm still adding a few more to the queue. But
have you any good wide receivers in it?
No, we haven't seen a good wide receiver since round 2. We have. Well, now they're just flying off the board. Right now, we still have surviving MVS, Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Chase Claypool. I actually wouldn't be mad if Olave or Garrett Wilson made it back to us. I would
have loved any of those guys that just went.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd also like those guys. And then I did put in Matthew Stafford here, just another quarterback. We do have him with Allen Robinson. He'd be a fine pick here as ADP. So if we want another quarterback, we could go there.
I thought you were going to tell us that he had roster flexibility options and we could play him at wide receiver.
Yeah, well, you never know. Let me pull up our queue here real quick since we're almost on the clock. We'll try to get this.
But I do think Stafford is somebody who comes into play at this point. If you're looking to stack things up, I think then kind of locks us.
If we didn't take Kyle Pitts, we could have Dallas Goedert here and had the AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert stack.
We have to just pay him back.
Hold on, wait. Who do we want here? Who do we want here? We have 13 seconds. Who do we want here?
I would probably lean to Stafford, and then that because we're going to need extra picks for our wide receiver position. And I think if we lock into bye week 7, we can't do that. Scrap that. Take Garrett Wilson.
I would say, yeah. I mean, it's tough.
I think we're going to get Stafford.
Don't take Stafford. Were we too late? Oh, okay. The reason I'm saying that it's a week 7 bye, so now we do need to.
No, what a nightmare.
So we're going to be in a little bit of trouble here, but we will figure it out.
Guys, we're vets here, guys.
Yeah,
allegedly.
I think we're too relaxed today. I think that's what's happening.
I mean, I blame the Kyle Pitts pick for just this derailing this whole thing.
It was going perfect up to that point.
All right, I'm gonna log off.
So I looking here at the options we do have. I do think that there's 3 picks before us, and I was about to say hopefully one of those wide receivers gets to us. We have one option now in Garrett Wilson. We'll see how it plays if it gets to him. If it doesn't, it's a lot of wide receiver or running back options that are available to us if we don't really get Wilson. How do you feel about Robert Woods if that's where we had to go at this point with our veteran squad that we're drafting?
I mean, it's pretty gross. Absolutely. At least I can point to the upside of like one of the older guys. I don't know where Robert Woods' upside lies going from the number 1 EPA passing team in the NFL, so the Titans. It's really tough. It's really tough to kind of glom on there, but we are in dire straits at this point. We might have to just punt the third quarterback too and just say screw it.
I think we're going. I do honestly think we may have to. I would probably still even with everything considered, I would probably still lean to Garden or Singletary here and get another one of these running backs.
Reeves.
Tyler Boyd's the other option that I would pitch in there.
Yeah, he should be there.
Let's go for Tyler Boyd. Let's do Boyd, and we'll see how we get on. We just need those wide receivers to get things back on track here.
We got Boyd.
The brand is in in tatters here as we go through the draft.
Tyler Boyd he's a RotoViz favorite, isn't he? He always
100%. Yeah. So look, there's a lot of things here. There's players that we have drafted that I'm, not that optimistic about, but I could also be very wrong. And one of the things that Sean is always very good at when we're doing our podcast, we are going to be wrong on a lot of this stuff. Like Michael Thomas, like you said, could come back in training camp, and maybe this is the one share of him that I have that ends up, bringing us to the promised land and winning this tournament. We do have a little bit of time before we get to that next pick. If you are watching along, hit that like button on today's video. Zach, I'm interested to get your thoughts as we've run through the team here so far. How are you feeling as this draft progresses?
Let's keep Rich on for another draft after this one so we can get something we feel good about. No, I don't think it's actually that bad. I mean, there's certainly a couple things that, that when you're doing these live streams, you have to kind of embrace the madness of it all a little bit with some of the things not going as planned. The 30-second clock is hard. But with that being said, I'm not completely mad about our wide receiver group, even though I think we would agree we'd like for it to be a little bit better. We at least have 3 of our 4 wide receivers on pretty decent offenses. Maybe Michael Thomas surprises us and is that 4th wide receiver on a decent offense if something happens there. So I don't hate that. Kyle Pitts, hopefully he's at least a target hog there. And then we have 2 good running backs in theory. I mean, the Ezekiel Elliott value I think is well worth the selection there. And then you're never going to be wrong or upset with getting CMC at the 4th overall pick. So I think right now I would actually want to have a conversation, at least a little bit of considering, do we just punt quarterback for 1 week?
We have to. I think we have to.
Like I don't know if I necessarily am going to feel good enough about getting a 3rd quarterback late just because we have a bye week and
for what, for week 7?
Right, like week 7, like I think week 7 is also like one of the most bye week heavy weeks of the season if I'm not mistaken. So like there's going to be a lot of teams that I think they're going to be down.
It'll actually improve our uniqueness as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's gonna be the most unique roster in the entire tournament.
That's right. I don't completely hate the roster, so I'm okay. I think if we can hammer a couple more wide receivers here, we're going to be okay.
My big thing when you're doing drafts is when you get to a point like at the 10th round, your team can look good, but you will lose your draft from this point forward. So I still think that we can round this out quite strongly as we finish things out. Chris Geese embraced the -20. So he's just he says here, don't be afraid of the bye. So maybe we will run through that. I'm interested. He's gone. I was about to say Singletary made it all the way back.
We're on the clock here.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Singletary made it all the way back, and we're going to really put ourselves under pressure here. Rondell Moore would be the pick for me here, unless we want to.
Yeah, I was just looking at Rondell Moore. Gives us a little bit of the Kyle Pitts run back and maybe some upside. I think I'm all the way locked in on Rondell. The second vote.
Good call. I like that one.
I think too. Like I think that Marquise Brown, and obviously we talked there a little bit about Hopkins and his suspension, but I think there's still ways that we could potentially see Rondell be the top scoring wide receiver in that offense. I know the way last year's season finished, that was not positive at all, but I think that like he's still going severely discounted versus what we were expecting. Like last year he was a 13th round pick. He's a late 10th, early 11th round pick this year. So I think he could still be interested. Do you have much hope for Rondell this year? You said you were all in on the pick, but is that because we have no wide receivers so far?
Well, I like him in these formats. He's probably not a guy come August I will draft really on any teams, just because he's not my type of player. I mean, what he was last year in the NFL is what he was in college. Like, there's nothing changed. He's a low ADOT, needs functionary passes at the line of scrimmage. He needs a lot of them. He just needs a lot more targets than his wide receiver peers, and that's the type of player he is. It's the archetype of player he is. I think he's great for these types of formats, and you get him in your stacks at this price. But I mean, come August, like he's gonna be a guy you won't get right in a weekly league. Like the week you start him, he's gonna have 6 points, and the week you bench him, he's gonna have 18. Like, and I hate those types of players.
Yeah, they're the worst.
He probably mightn't have the extreme upside of the Deshaun or Jackson weeks, but he feels to me like that sort of player that best ball is definitely the area to be selecting him. We are one pick away. There's some wide receiver options here we do like. We probably could look towards a second tight end, but given the fact that we drafted Kyle Pitts so early in this draft, I think I'll probably wait. So I would probably lean towards Krueger here, or else we have the option of Gesicki. Anyone else that you're liking? There is some 0 RB names there as well, but I think
I like Crowder. I'll just say that over Williams. Reeves.
Yeah, Hardman, Crowder. What else we got at wide receiver?
Let's go Crowder before we miss out again.
We're gonna time out there. But I like the one nice thing though. Yeah, the one nice thing though I do like about Crowder is I do think that he's still going to see a decent amount of target volume in a very valuable slot role that we've seen for Buffalo over the last several years with Cole Beasley. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Week 17 correlation between Crowder and Boyd. We know that's obviously what we want above anything else. So,
all right, listen, some guys to put some of these guys in the queue.
Give them to me.
Van Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Joshua Palmer. This is just like create some correlation and then some the stacks we already have. Obviously, if you have Van, he's going to be on the field with Allen Robinson. If Allen Robinson gets hurt, there's a lot of ways for that to work out for us. Yeah. Joshua Palmer obviously is a late season correlation run back with the Rams guys. And then KJ Osborne, I just think is extremely undervalued at this point. I mean, this is a team that's going to live in 11 personnel this year. He's going to be a full-time player. They ran 380 more plays at 11 personnel than the Vikings ran last year. So he's going to be on the field the entire time. Plus you have the incentive of if anything happens to Thielen or Justin Jefferson, which we don't want to ever happen, but like it's another bump like we saw with Thielen last year.
Oh yeah. Can we put Jalen Tolbert in the queue just as a
we have to
like, or
swing on some of these.
How far are you scrolling down here, Zach, at the moment?
I was just saying to stick guys in the queue. This is not to pull guys to the next pick. It was literally just like, hey, throw these guys in here. So when I talk us through the next pick.
They're all at ADP. So we're gonna be able to actually take one of these guys here. To answer your question, Colm, how far down am I? I have Baltimore Ravens rookie wide receiver Mark Clayton currently.
That's our next pick.
That's our next pick. Is how far down I've gotten. So.
I didn't catch. Where did Dobbins go in this draft after yesterday?
He just went 55th overall in the 5th round. Looks like after Breece Hall.
He went ahead of Akers?
Yeah. One running back, 4 picks.
Yeah.
Very interesting because it seems to be the consensus from multiple people is that he's not going to start the year.
Yeah, I saw something he might actually be a candidate for the PUP list where he missed the first 6 games. So that's not. He
had an ACL plus LCL surgery. It wasn't just ACL surgery. Chow said he was a PUP candidate. I saw. And remember, the PUP this year is 4 games, not 6 to start the year.
Okay.
So keep that in mind too. But I was curious to see where after yesterday he was going to start going though, like where he'd start dipping.
Yeah, I don't. Is that
it can be a case that
slide?
Yeah, there can be a case too. Like, it could be a 1 draft sample. Maybe in another draft he makes it to the 6th round, for example. But I still think like we're seeing some guys with like, we're seeing Godwin and that, still going a pretty high draft slot. So, I don't think people are taking into. I always talk about PlayStation games and things like that where people don't consider the injuries as actual injuries. They just expect everyone to come back. And I do think that when Adrian Peterson came back from his injury that time, I think it really skewed people's perception of players coming back from injury. A lot of people do struggle. Like, being a Packers fan, like David Bakhtiari never really got back last year, even after a year of being, recovering. Players don't always recover. So can you scroll down the board just a little bit, Zach? It's showing just a little bit high there.
Yeah, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to flip.
And you spring the surprise that we're on the clock on the next pick. So that was.
We almost are. So I wanted Gesicki possibly here. We do have some of Reeves guys. We can go Van Jefferson here and get some other people added in the queue if we wanted to.
I'm happy to do that based on having Stafford and Robinson there.
Yeah. Are you good with Van Jefferson here, Reeves?
Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
All right. So we'll let that time out just so we can get another pick in here. Where do we want to go then after that? Our tight ends are getting thin. Probably worth noting that Pitts has a week 14 bye, so we probably don't want someone like Cole Kmet. But we got Hunter Henry. It's kind of actually rough out here in the tight end streets at the moment.
We're just fading all the bye weeks, so we should get some of those week 14 bye tight ends as well.
This team probably would have better off getting 2 good tight ends the way the receivers went.
Yeah, that would I had kind of thought about that earlier. When the ones I would be trying to target are a little bit later, and that's Fant and Everett are probably the two tight ends I think at this point would be my targets. Have you any late tight ends, Reeves, that you're looking to target this year?
I don't know about so much as late. I mean, obviously, Njoku, Irv Smith. I mean, even if Deshaun Watson gets suspended, I think Njoku could pick it as an EP. I mean, look at in the history of quarterbacks, only 2 quarterbacks have targeted tight ends more than Jacoby Brissett. So if that happens, like I still think Njoku has a big runway, playing with another wide receiver, one that's on like the age apex. Really no good wide receiver 2s on that roster yet that have established themselves. So I still like him. Any of the guys you can attach to the quarterbacks, right? Like you get Gerald Everett in these, right? Like you're never going to start Gerald Everett in your season-long league, but you just get his best weeks. They come along with him here. So you get. I'm
gonna pitch two options here with 15 seconds. You don't have them in the queue, but I would go Spiller or Gainwell here because we do just have the 2. Have you any preference of Spiller?
Well, Spiller has way more 3-down upside than Gainwell.
100%. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. Yeah,
we went ahead and went with Spiller there. I actually had Henderson in the queue also as a late ad, just for obviously what we now have is every Rams player in the
Rams
NFL.
Chargers.
Yeah. Well, now that we have that too, that's actually a really good point as well. So we have that. One thing I was looking at for our roster, maybe we need to figure out what we want our next couple of picks to be here real quick. So if we're going to agree that we're going to punt a third quarterback, then we're locked in there at QB. Are we doing a 2 tight end build, would we probably say at this point in time with Pitts as our 1? We probably don't need a second.
I think if we get
a third.
Yeah. Well, and Njoku's still somebody who may come back to us, but I think between him, Everett, and Fant would be the 3 that I'd read. And Everett and Fant are probably going to be at the next swing back.
Yeah. Listen, just add Higbee. Let's just get all the Rams that aren't Cooper Kupp.
That's another. If
Cooper Kupp gets hurt, this will be the team. This will be the squad.
We're fading Kupp. That's what it is.
the fall fades Cooper Kupp team.
We knew that Kupp wouldn't work out, so we just got everyone else.
We just had all the other Rams.
Yeah, that's great.
Give us a run through the wide receivers we've ended up with, Zach, at this point. I think we'll start to feel a little bit better about how things are playing out at this stage.
Yeah, so we got 7 wide receivers right now. We have A.J. Brown, Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas, Tyler Boyd, Rondale Moore, Jamison Crowder, and Van Jefferson. Also funnily enough, maybe of our 7 wide receivers, 4 of them are also on week 7 bye. So we're really going to be getting a hit at week 7 with essentially no quarterback in 4 of our 7 wide receivers.
They're all Rams. They're all Rams players.
They are. Yeah. So I mean, I guess that gives everyone a chance to catch up for 1 week before we just continue to plow through the league and on the way to the millie. But yes, 7 wide receivers right now, 2 QBs, 3 running backs, and a single tight end right now.
Rob messages into that Rams are maybe one of the 2 or 3 teams where you can get away with a 4 stack as well. And you kind of hinted at it, Rich, but like we have a team here that's stacked with Rams without Kupp, and I think that could be pretty unique as well. I think a lot of people will be starting with him and then trying to push the other elements into it. We have now 3 running backs. I do think that we probably will go for 4 to 5 running backs, I think, Zach, in this build to see how things play out. Mm-hmm. I do think we should put some consideration into avoiding some players with week 7 at the wide receiver position if we take any more, as we get a comment in here from Miami. Mike can't wait for week 7. So we'll see how we fare in week 7 there. But I think that it's looking a lot more positive than it was just 5 rounds ago.
Yeah. I don't think it's bad. We certainly need to get a couple of these guys to hit and give us some productive weeks, maybe early on at wide receiver, but overall, I don't dislike it. The other thing too is our team, in theory, should be heavily boosted by great running back production. If either of those happens, then hopefully the proper mixture of wide receivers and guys whose profiles we largely like, or at least we like them at their ADP for what we got them at. Like I think that the mixture of it could still, work out well enough for us that it'll be a good start.
We did call it out, but we have 5 picks left in this draft. We are definitely punting the quarterback spot here for week 7.
Yeah, I think so. Let's actually. I'm going to give us a little bit of time.
Unless there's something that stands out.
Here's what we're working at. We have a couple guys ahead of us on the clock. I have a few tight ends in the queue. I have no wide receivers in there at the moment. Is there any leans that we have as we get ready to hit the clock here to make sure we get what we want?
Hamler would be the one that's there, and potentially David Bell out of the 4 wide receivers that are on view. Have you anyone that you feel strongly about, Reeves? Do you want to scroll down through those just to see? There's Will Fuller still. Will Fuller still the last.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this team takes the swing on Will Fuller. We hope for the best that he signs the Packers.
Yeah, we're on the clock now. So where do we want to go right here? Will Fuller, we could always take him.
I would be fine. Honestly, it would be fine just like on this team throwing a Hail Mary on Will Fuller or even Sammy Watkins, because he would fit the old receiver so well. But just throwing a dart on someone that plays on a good team, right? I don't mind Hamler either. He's another one of those guys, probably not going to start the year, but it doesn't matter if he doesn't start the year at this point. Is ADP.
Right.
He did go a few picks before, so I probably would have took Hamler then Fuller. Gotcha. But interesting, when you clicked on Will Fuller, the last piece of news for him is that he wasn't
unlikely to return in 2021. Yeah, I was just going to ask, is there?
We haven't heard anything about him. He tweeted in February. I heard his Instagram. He was having another finger surgery, and that was like the last time we heard from him at all.
At this point, it might be better if he removes that finger. We just get.
Yeah. Just be a 4.
And you think about how he went through last offseason too. I mean, he'd come off that career year, and he definitely was going to be suspended for one game, but he basically didn't really garner a lot of interest in free agency last year either, coming off of his career year, which probably isn't a good pair with what's going on this offseason.
Yeah, he signed that 1-year deal, hoping to get up, but we'll take the pressure off Zach. Here he is. We are on the clock again. We have Fant and Higbee, and I think now is the time to lock in.
Let's do Higbee. Let's do Higbee.
Do we want to do Higbee when it is week 7?
Or is it week 7?
Yeah. Do we?
Well, our tight end's not week 7, is it?
No, he's not. It's just so many week 7s, but we can go Higbee and just really embrace all the Rams.
Okay, I was just thinking that we might get a couple of extra points that week, but no, don't worry. We'll take the 0 in week 7 and we'll move along.
Yeah, I mean. When you're smashing everybody with Rams.
Did Gerald Everett go?
Everett had gone. Yeah, that was one of the comments that came in, was to take Everett, but he had.
He would have been the inverse, the All LA Bowl.
Yeah, no, I would have loved. He was the guy that I was hoping to get, and Sean is drafting a huge amount of Everett this year as his kind of second tight end. So I'm going to tail that one throughout the summer. Joe Smo messaged in Hamler and the Lockett role. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this Broncos offense kicks off this season. I'm really excited to see these wide receivers. Like, I think that Judy and Sutton and Hamler are all very talented. I think Tim Patrick is showing enough as well, and he's after getting a big contract, obviously. Then we have Albert Okuabunam. There's just so many, Javonte Williams. There's so many exciting players. I'm interested to see
the whole line is way better than what he had in Seattle.
Yeah, it's just like Wilson has never been in this situation, but these wide receivers have also never been in this situation. Like that, they've played with a lot of bad quarterbacks. So I'm very excited for the Broncos and how that kicks off this year. It might not be as good as we're hoping, but I think it's going to be very, very good.
Yeah, and you get the AFC Arms West, when they play in those interdivision games. I mean, all those games should be on primetime. Every primetime week should be, if AFC West teams play each other, it should be a primetime game.
Yeah, no, I think, and it looked like it was going to be a situation where, the Chiefs had kind of got so far ahead, then the Chargers with Herbert have kind of got pretty close to them. But I thought the Raiders were going to be like completely out, and then they just decided we're going to go and trade for Devontae Adams and make
the Raiders are going to be interesting because they have built like a decent their defensive front actually is pretty decent too, but their offensive line is maybe one of the worst in the NFL. They did nothing to address it this offseason as well. And it's going to be really interesting to see if that's kind of going to be their undoing. The Chiefs are interesting because we had talked about this for years with Davis Maddock. Like, I think the Chiefs did a really bad job outside of last offseason of really building around that roster. I think that they did what Seattle did. I mean, they gave away a bunch of first-round picks. They didn't, when they did this with Russ, right? Like, and I feel like the Chiefs didn't do a good job of bringing enough influx of young talent into that roster, and maybe that catches up to them. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe
I assume you mean with the rookie contract for Mahomes.
Yeah, and their draft class last year, the year before, was their best. So I mean, they at least retooled that offensive line and were able to do that. But that roster was kind of devoid of talent and bringing in talent. When you trade for Frank Clark and stuff, it's like, I mean, Mahomes is that good, and I mean, I have so much faith in Andy Reid. But yeah, it is interesting that the place that the Chiefs have put themselves in now, especially now having to move off of Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And the other part that I think is going to be interesting with the Raiders side of things, I know they make a trade and it's a lot of fun and they get Devontae Adams, but you're mentioning the offensive line and things like that. It'll be interesting to see in 3 to 4 years how that plays out. There's a lot of times we see these trades and immediately their reaction is one team has made the right decision here, and often a couple of years down the line, it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out for the Packers and the Raiders over the coming years. But I thought the Raiders were going to kind of try and retool things and kind of break everything down, but they went the opposite way and threw all their eggs all their chips into the center of the table. Who are you looking at here, Zach, as we wait in the next
So I wanted to ask a quick question so I knew how to address the queue in the next couple of picks here. But are we agreed probably 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, and then we have 14 other players to decide between running back and wide receiver? Because I'm thinking right now we do something either like a 2-5-9-2 build, I think, if my math is correct there, as opposed to a 2-6-8-2 build. I think we probably still need another wide receiver given how top heavy we are running back. So I would be more partial to the 2-5-9-2 build at this point in time if everyone else is good with that. And then because of that, I have guys like J.D. McKissick on the clock, obviously just going to be a PPR guy. And then I even am pretty partial to Brian Robinson in a lot of ways, if there's anyone else here who wants to chime in real quick.
And any thoughts on Marlon Mack as the other player, Rich? 15 seconds.
Yeah, I don't mind. And we're in that zone of throwing those kind of darts.
Any preference here?
I would say, I mean, if you're looking for like potential touchdowns, I would say Brian Robinson would be the best bet at like running into some touchdowns.
Yeah, I went with him. So that is
was your preference as well, was it, Zach?
I'm very high on Brian Robinson, just probably only as the guy who's in DC and has heard way too much about Commanders talk and what they're planning on doing. But I am very much just kind of convinced that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to at least find the short yardage goal line touchdowns. I don't know how much the team is in love with Antonio Gibson the way we are in the fantasy community, or at least the way we used to be. So I think from that perspective, I think he's going to see an opportunity to get a lot of punch-in scores. And then I think if Gibson were to go down at any point in time, I think that's going to be the Brian Robinson show. Hopefully in a decent offense. If the offense sucks, then, it might be a hard pick to stomach some weeks. But I personally like Brian Robinson just because of the role I think he'll have early in the season, even if Gibson is healthy. And then if Gibson were to go down at any point, I think he kind of becomes a guy who's at least going to fall into some double-digit carries in the weeks that Gibson is out.
We are one pick away. There's not a huge amount of exciting options here for us.
I kind of like Marlon Mack here. We just talked about him last round.
I'll go Marlon Mack if you want. The other player, I suppose, is Chenault.
Oh, Chenault. What about Philip Lindsay? Is he gone too?
I doubt it. He's not gone.
You add him to the queue, he'll probably still be there. I mean, he's just literally I mean, if you look at the guys behind Jonathan Taylor, he would have to be the next guy up, I would think.
Yeah. We can put him in there. I like having him in there. I actually haven't even considered Lindsay a lot. Do we think he's going to make it through do we think we'll make it through training camp and actually find the roster spot on there as like the RB3?
I mean, it's wide open there. There's no one else good there.
Yeah.
The only player really they have obviously Hines who's going to catch passes, but I think
Jackson.
They still need somebody that's going to be there behind Taylor. I'm
interested.
The thing with Marlon Mack that I'm finding interesting is, like, obviously the Texans are going to be bad, I would assume, this year, and I would also but he feels to me like somebody who in previous years would be like, and almost pushed up to the dead. So with some of these running backs, and he is just a forgotten man. Like, he is likely to get quite a bit of work, but there's a difference in taking him in the 10th round and taking him in the 17th round. But yeah, not a very exciting pick, but I think the way we're going with we want to keep that age up. We want to keep our team age up here. So I'll add in Marlon Mack. We have one pick left. I think we probably do try and see if there is a wide receiver of interest here, but Who are some
what
of
do we have here? Donovan Peoples-Jones, Devin Duvernay.
Let me give you the read, and you just tell me. You just tell me yes or no for this final wide receiver pick here. So we got OBJ, Duvernay, Peoples-Jones. Should we add any of them in there? Let's yes or no.
I mean, I don't have a problem with some of those guys as a Hail Mary.
Yeah, we have Justin Ross, we have Brian Edwards, Romeo Dubes, Isaiah McKenzie. Maybe he's interesting. We do have Crowder. So maybe
What about Quez Watkins?
Quez? Yeah, Quez is definitely available. I'll put him in the queue.
You can get really unique in these last few rounds. You can just draft people who won't be drafted in 98% of the other drafts.
Yeah, I mean, Quez will be. He's a week 7 guy, obviously, because he's another part of our Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
So that might hurt us.
What about some of these guys who aren't getting drafted, like we joke about how gross they sound, but like Velus Jones, Tyquan Thornton, like these are guys who might actually.
I think Tyquan Thornton should be getting drafted. I definitely think so.
Yeah. Like he's available. He might fall to us. We joke about Velus Jones. Like the reality is.
He would actually increase our age as well. He would increase.
Yeah.
Our average age jumps to 69 after we
have veterans younger than him though.
I think I was kind of holding off to see how it played out, but I think Thornton is the ideal sort of pick to be taken at this point, where there's really no opportunity cost, but there's a high, upside to a player like that. I really think in these last couple of rounds, I know we took Martin Mack in the last round, but you want to be taking young players who the upside is there. We do get a call out as well about Shakir as well as a possible option. Isaiah McKenzie, who you mentioned, does go off the board there. So I think you want to be looking at the upside. So we'll see how it plays out over the next couple of rounds. And Brevin Jordan goes off the board. The Texans are going to be bad, but I think he's interesting as well. Do we manage to get the option of Thornton there?
We just lost him, dude. This guy's listening to us probably. So I have DPJ in there. We could go with Reeves' pick of Watkins. It hurts us for week 7.
We could take the week 7 hurts us, but so we take Peoples-Jones because the Niner.
Yeah.
He's basically like poor man's MVS is really what he is. He's Cleveland Marcus Valdes-Scantling.
Let's do him.
And MVS is now rich man's MVS also.
I was joking with Dwayne McFarland that the last time MVS was a top 60 wide receiver pick, it didn't end very, very well.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. The one thing before we get into looking at the team that I wanted to ask you about is we obviously took Will Fuller, the likes of Julio Jones was another player who is unsigned at the moment. There's quite a few veteran unsigned wide receivers. How are you feeling about targeting them? I think the likes of Jones when he gets signed, I don't know how much is left in the tank, but when he gets signed, I would expect him to jump, 2 to 3 rounds in terms of his current ADP. And you mentioned with Michael Thomas, if he showed up to training camp, there's some of these veterans, I think we could see large shifts in ADP over the next 2 months.
Yeah, our training camps are still 5 weeks away. Yeah. I mean, veteran training camps, there's a lot that can happen. And we're taking a lot of stuff. Like we talked about Dobbins thing, right? Like what if Dobbins is there? Like, there's a lot of things that we just don't know. We're going to be flying blind for 5 weeks. And we're going to be taking just a lot of information, but not see anybody on any of these fields. It's going to be a lot of Instagram videos. It's going to be a lot of like workout clips and stuff like that. Julio is interesting to me only because of how cheap he is. And I just can't see a scenario where Julio signs to a bad team. Like if he's going to play, like he's going to sign to a team that has like a chance to win, right? I
think players like Julio, for example, I think like there's more chance that he sits out the first 5 weeks of the season and then signs for a team who needs a wide receiver who has a chance to win than he signs for a bad team.
Yeah, why not? Too, he should, given his pull the Roger Clemens route. Wait and see. He absolutely should. And we've got a number of those guys out there too. You talk about Emmanuel Sanders, like Cole Beasley. Wait for the Cowboys to re-sign Cole Beasley. Wait for that to happen. But so yeah, I think Julio's the one interesting guy. Like we took Will Fuller. Like Will Fuller, like will probably go if like even a bad team wants to give him money, right? But Julio is one guy I see like if he's gonna sign somewhere, it's gonna be like with the Ravens, with the Bucks, with the Packers, or like you said, a team that's winning loses a player at the onset of the season. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of like the one guy I like, even given his age, just because his price is like you said, it's round 16, 17, 18. Why not?
And I think the other player that goes in that range who I didn't mention is OBJ. And, obviously he got injured in the Super Bowl. So I think people need to compare that with the injury situation. But, well, Fuller obviously is still not, 100% with that finger injury, but Julio should be pretty much 100%. So I think he's interesting there. But running through the team that we finish up with, we do have Hurts and Stafford. We do have that week 7 bye, so we're taking a 0 there, but we'll see how it plays out. We have Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Isaiah Spiller, who I really like there, Brian Robinson, who at this point is the prototypical Zach Krueger pick here in this draft.
And then he's my brand.
Yeah, we have Marlon Mack. We have AJ Brown to go with Hurts. We have Allen Robinson to go with Stafford. Then we have Michael Thomas, who we have been assured by Rich is going to come in the best shape of his life.
I did not say that.
At the end of camp. And then we have Tyler Boyd, I think, is severely underrated in terms of where he's going in drafts. I know, we have the likes of the Chase and Higgins obviously going much, much earlier in those first 3 rounds. But if anything happens to them or they miss any time, like I would say he potentially for me is the best wide receiver 3 on any roster in the NFL. Like he is very, very talented. Then we have Rondell Moore, second-year player. I think Jamison Crowder, you mentioned Cole Beasley. I also think that he's going to be a big problem for Dawson Knox, particularly in the red zone. I think that's an area where we can see Crowder do some nice work there. We have Van Jefferson to add to that Ram stack. We have Will Fuller. Just need to get that finger sorted. And then we have Donovan Peoples-Jones. We have Kyle Pitts, who we're hoping does everything for this team. And then we have Tyler Higbee, obviously to add to that stack to give us a little bit of depth at the tight end position. I'll go to you first. Rich, how are you feeling about how things have played out? We could sense in the room probably that 10 rounds in we were wondering where we were going here, but I think we've rounded it out pretty good. And we've the one thing I'll say is I might add up all the players' ages after this draft. I think this is the oldest team I'll draft this year.
Yeah, this is definitely a singer in a smoky room team. Don't stop believing. This is, I mean, you just go back to the front here, and like I said, it's probably my fault. I'm terrible for these types of shows, but yeah, I mean, if you swap Pitts out with Hollywood Brown or someone else, like this has a whole different type of feel to it. And maybe Pitts is just that unicorn, right? Like we all kind of know like the Pitts unicorn season can happen, and it feels like we're just trying to be early ahead of it because when he gets there, he's going to be a first.
Pitts his last season with 10 touchdowns, like that's all he has to do. Like he just needs to add the touchdowns to last year's season to pretty much have that unicorn season,
right? But because once he gets there, he's going to be basically go through a stretch of his career where he's a first round pick. It's just going to get there. I mean, I don't know. And we're probably still maybe at least a year away given the situation. But if Mariota plays well, you never know. So we'll just have to cheer for that, man. We're cheering for that upside, and then we're cheering for Michael Thomas to at least play in week 1.
We just need to get a couple of games out of Michael Thomas. That's what we're hoping for.
But yeah, I mean, we would have liked to have one more good wide receiver up here, though, for sure.
Yeah.
Whether that come at the expense of not taking the quarterbacks where we did, or the tight end where we did, but we would love to see another good wide receiver on this roster.
How are you feeling, Zach?
I mean, I'll officially pen an apology on Twitter for even having Kyle Pitts in the queue. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, obviously, I do think that that's where we're at. I think that the wide receiver pick there, like we would have had a couple better guys.
What was the board if we didn't take Zeke at ADP? Like, if just for the hell, like we basically took Zeke on principle of just like, well, is this the lowest he'll ever fall?
Yeah, so I actually pulled the board up here just because I thought we did have a couple of interesting things that would be worth looking back on.
So we could have taken Amari, Devontae Smith.
The only player I would have pitched ahead of Elliott would have been Hall, so I think I would have still went running back there.
I was just thinking, given what we had started with taking Pitts, like we would embrace just the full anchor build, like a full anchor with CMC as the anchor, who's a pretty solid anchor. But I mean, I was just trying to see another opportunity outside of the Kyle Pitts selection where we could have added that good, at least aesthetically appealing wide receiver.
Yeah, because I mean, even if you would have had like Juju over Ezekiel Elliott, like maybe that works out. Potentially good wide receiver and a great offense. Smith would have been fun for the Philly stack. I think we would have actually probably been able to maybe get Brown, Smith, and Jalen Hurts, which would have been a heck of a start there. But I do think that looking back at the Pitt stack, not the Pitt stack, but the Pitt selection, like we do have a handful of guys who I am easily drafting over him, or at least, willing to take someone else over him in a lot of drafts. In particular, I would probably say Courtland Sutton, Jalen Waddle are both guys who I really like getting my hands on. Even Deontay Johnson, I probably would have, made a bigger argument for someone like Kyle Pitts. I think I just kind of had him as a Q as a potential elite tight end. Right. But there's a lot of reason to doubt that would work out. Certainly, that's probably why I haven't drafted Kyle Pitts a lot outside of this draft. Probably. Yeah.
No, I think though, there's no problem with the Kyle Pitts pick. I think we wanted to get an elite tight end. So, if I was moving this around and I could do it the exact way I wanted, I probably would take Mike Williams or Marquise Brown over Kyle Pitts, and then I would have taken Rashad Bateman, I think, over Allen Robinson at that pick in the 4th round. But I do think then when we get into that 5th round and we take Ezekiel Elliott, I think if we had taken Brown in the 3rd round, we may have leaped a little bit early to try and get Kyler Murray where we got Zeke. And then that would have probably left us where we have Jalen Hurts. We might have took the likes of Brandon Ayuk, or I actually think we would have went for Hopkins to really stack in the Cardinals. So I think rather than
one of my favorite stacks in these big tournaments is the Cardinals, because they're palatable at ADP where you don't really have to reach. And then you look at their playoff schedule, not just the week 17, you look at their entire playoff schedule. I mean, they play Tampa Bay, Denver, and then Atlanta in the finals, which is, you get 2 potential shootout games with back and forth, and then 1 potential dog sledding game.
And they're pretty much indoors in the majority of their games as well, which is always a benefit. You don't have to worry about the weather. But I think we probably would have altered the overall structure of the team more than we would have swapped players in or out. But I think looking at it now, it's not like if we didn't take Michael Thomas there, I don't know. Probably if we didn't take Pitts, I would have took TJ Hawkinson. There's a couple of things there that are a little bit tricky to maneuver based on how the draft went. I think some of the players that were drafting in that 1, 2, 3 range caught us a few times with picks that we may have taken if they didn't, just didn't work out exactly the way. But I think overall, when we're sitting in, the playoffs, and we're here in January and we've won the $2 million top prize, right? Everyone will be like when Michael Thomas is the comeback player of the year, and it's between him and Allen Robinson. Even though Allen Robinson did play last year, just how badly he played, he'll be in the consideration for comeback.
This team needs 3 things that have happened. You need the Ezekiel Elliott 20 touchdown season, a Cooper Kupp injury, and Michael Thomas to play.
Yeah, and Michael Thomas's season is actually going to be so good that he beats out Christian McCaffrey, who gets 20 touchdowns this season as well for comeback player of the year. So yeah, that's what we're pinning our hopes on. But really fun having the draft. As you mentioned, sometimes when you're on the clock, I like to have fun in these drafts as well. That's the most important thing when we're having these conversations, to have a little bit of fun. But I want to say to Rich, it's been a pleasure having you on. Hopefully you've enjoyed doing the veteran draft, as I guess we'll remember it from this point forward. But if you aren't following Rich on Twitter, make sure you do so at Lord Reeves, one of the smartest minds in the entire fantasy football industry. Make sure you're following him there. If you are watching this video now as well, make sure you do give it that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button on the RotoViz YouTube channel. But Rich, as we start to sign things off here, thanks a lot for jumping on.
Yeah, anytime, guys. I wish it would have went better aesthetically, but sometimes maybe when we look back at things, this will be the gem, the uncut gem for all of us.
One of the fun things about doing drafts and recording them is often the picks that you're like, how did that pick come about? And you listen back to the show. I know at times myself and Sean have drafted shows and we've thought, how did that pick happen? And then we're like, well, we recorded it so we can go back and find out. I remember on Chip Chasing last year, there was one of the picks, I think it was Leone pitched to draft Jamar Chase, and he was kind of, everyone kind of nearly went against him, and he made the pick, and then Jamar Chase ended up being the player who kind of won them the money last year. So these things can play out. So we probably have a good few clips here if this team has success this year that we can play back. But make sure as well to follow Zach on Twitter at ZK_FFB. Myself and him will have many more best ball shows coming for you throughout this off season. Hopefully this is going to be a weekly thing. We do have Peter Overzet on deck for next week, so we're looking forward to bringing you that one. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at OvertimeIreland. And until we're back with another show, have a good one.